Hello, welcome eVscope users. We can see that there are already dozens and maybe even 100 of you with us so far. Welcome to our Unistellar live onboarding in English. I'm Whitney. I'll be moderating today's event. I'm joined by Jan and Alex, who will meet shortly. This video is going to serve as an in-depth onboarding to getting your eVscope set up and running. So it's pretty easy to take out of the box. We want to help you make sure that you can get it turned on, focused on an object, and maybe even share that experience with somebody starting on night one. If you're viewing this video after our live event, you can check out the chapter markers on YouTube to jump back and forth to the content that is most helpful to you. So here's an overview of some of the topics that we're going to cover off on today. We'll go over some observation requirements so that you can make sure that your skies and your surroundings are set up for success. We'll talk about how to set up your eVscope, get it powered, some tips for cold weather because it's wintertime right now. That's got to be helpful. We'll talk about how to connect to the smartphone, navigate just some of the basic features of the app, learn about some of that autonomous field detection, the enhanced vision, and a few other helpful tips to complete your viewing experience. So as I mentioned, today I'm joined by Jan, who is one of our experts at Unistellar, and Alex, who is one of our expert users. So Jan, could you start and tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Yep, thank you, Whitney. So my name is Jan. I'm French. I'm based in Marseille. It's right now 4 a.m. So I woke up like 15 minutes ago. So I've been working at Unistellar for almost a year, since last Christmas. And my role at Unistellar is to deal with all the customers who write us because they need to know how to use their eVscope. They have questions about how basically to get great images. Maybe some people who also have kind of little issues and troubles. So I'm explaining them things right now only by email, maybe by phone later in 2021. And I'm also kind of in charge with all the tutorial videos that we have on our YouTube channel. For instance, we don't have many right now, but we will have more coming in the coming month. And so right now we have 3. I'm here with I'm dealing with all the lives as well. I've done 3 lives in French, and that's the very first one in English. So you'll have to forgive my English. I may have to look for my words for sometimes, but it should be okay. So here we go.
Yeah, and you're crushing it so far, buddy.
Thank you very much.
I think one of the best things about Unistellar is the true passion, both from within the company, for example, people like Jan, but also among our users for helping our community succeed and provide people with the support and the tips that they need to have an incredible experience. And one of the people who can talk a lot about that is Alex. So Alex, can you tell us a little bit about your background in astronomy? Because your story, your family story is so fascinating. But please also tell us about your experience with the eVscope and the role you play within some of our user groups.
Oh, absolutely. And thanks for having me. This is really exciting. I'm a geek. I love applying technology, and my day job is about helping folks really apply technology in their work settings. So technology that drives a great experience for people is just really important to me personally. I've always been passionate about all things science fiction, astronomy, the stars, space. I grew up, my dad had a large traditional scope early on, and again, having had a chance to see some of that just kind of got me hooked. As I grew older, I really didn't have an opportunity to use a traditional scope just because of some of the complexity, lack of time involved, those types of things. Until the last couple of years, I was actually really excited by seeing the eVscope on the Kickstarter when that first happened, and really starting to see the transition in the astronomy side of the world, really around how do we make this easy for folks? how do we start thinking about it a little bit differently? And I love the opportunity when folks are thinking that way. So when I was able to finally get my hands on one a while ago, for me, it's been awesome to be able to travel with it, to be able to observe with family together as well as folks remotely. And that's something that my dad and I are able to do on a regular basis. He's got a large, awesome traditional scope. He's doing astrophotography. Things come out amazing. I'm using the eVscope at the same time, able to jump in, and we're sharing images back and forth, and it's just been a lot of fun. So I've seen the eVscope really make things much more accessible. I personally was very excited about it and had reached out in the early days of the community building and got involved to help with 2 of the Facebook communities that exist, both the LA Facebook group as well as the eVscope global Facebook group. If you're not in those already and you're in either of those areas, you definitely want to jump into those groups. There are just hundreds and hundreds of folks who are sharing tips and ideas and stories and great pictures. And as you said, it's the community coming together in a really strong way.
Well, thank you. That's great. So I was wondering if you could start even before we turn on our eVscope. There are some important things to know about just a simple astronomical observation. A few requirements, if you will, in order to observe the cosmos. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about what those requirements are?
Well, your basics are first going to be make sure that you know that you don't have clouds out. That's our number one enemy as astronomers, is actually being able to see the skies, and that's probably the most frustrating element. Although I have to say that my first light with the eVscope, had it set up, was actually traveling in Florida at the time, had it with me, set it up, pointed it at the Orion Nebula, and there were medium thick clouds. And I was able to still actually see it at that time. I was blown away. So some clouds, you can still you're looking through the clouds with the eVscope. With a traditional scope, forget it. But having that clear sky, really important. One app I highly recommend for folks is Clear Skies for the iPhone, iPad. It gives you a great way to look ahead a day or 2 or 3 and just see what's the expected cloud cover. There's lots of other great sources, but that's absolutely number one.
We use it here at Unistellar.
Great app.
What about light around you? Are there certain lights that are acceptable? Moonlight, street light. What is and is not okay?
This is another one of those where if it was a traditional telescope, you would want it to be absolutely pitch black. And I didn't know what the word Bortle meant until I started getting into some of this. So that Bortle scale being, okay, how bright is my sky? I'm outside of Chicago, so the skies are about as bad as we can get here. We're a Bortle 8 as opposed to Bortle 9 downtown Chicago, meaning there's so much sky glow. That's something else I have just been blown away with, that in these bright skies, standing 30 feet from a street light that's shining directly on the scope, I'm still able to use it. So absolutely, I've had a chance to experience Bortle 3 skies. They're stunning. But if you're in a light-challenged environment like I am, it's still very doable. But yeah, trying to find something where you don't have light directly, specifically, especially if you're looking in the eyepiece, it helps just to be able to get a better view if it's not super bright.
Okay, sounds good. What about, are there any other kind of pro tips? I know that typically you're going to want really, really stable ground. Does that mean my kids can't be running in the area nearby? I mean, what does that mean? Does it have to be totally still, or?
So some of my observations, my typical spot at home, I actually have a second floor balcony, and it's a wood balcony. If I stand perfectly still on it, I can observe from that. But if you're putting it on a deck otherwise, and there's people walking by, those vibrations are definitely going to affect things. If it's on a concrete slab or a sidewalk, driveway, those work great. Grass, those are fine too. I haven't seen a whole lot of problem with that. I think the bigger challenge actually sometimes comes in from wind. And if you've got a wind that's 9-10 miles an hour, as an example, you'll start to get a little bit of vibration from that. I've actually hung a sandbag from the bottom of the tripod itself to help absorb some of those vibrations, and that's worked pretty well.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, there is an how you say that, an accelerometer. Do you say that? That will detect winds and shakes and stuff like that. So yeah, as you just said, you need to be perfectly still with basically no wind, like just a little wind will be okay. But if you have too much wind or too much, like for instance, people who's running around, yeah, you might have issues. For instance, with the enhanced vision, you might have some issues. So this is a thing you have to think about. Yeah.
Is it true that moonlight is the enemy of astronomers? Do you avoid the full moon, or do you try to find the moon so that you can fix your scope on it? What's your POV on moonlight?
I actually love looking at the moon with the eVscope. I'm not using enhanced vision for that. That's more the live view mode just because it's so bright, but that works. Looking at an object that's relatively close to the moon, that's a challenge. If it's more than 15, 20 degrees off, I can't say that I've seen too big a problem with that. If you're looking to do like a really long exposure on something, then same thing as before. Yes, a much darker sky works, but if it's just to really enjoy it, if the moon's up, the moon's up. I haven't had a whole lot of problem with it.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to just show you quickly the items that come along with the eVscope. And then hopefully, Alex, you could tell us, you have a 5-minute rapid fire setup. So tell me a little bit about it, and I can do a quick hands-on demo, because your eVscope is actually set up so that you can show people how the app works and give us that live demonstration. So first of all, something that we were just talking about before we began was something that is hidden under this very item. So could you guys tell me a little bit about, I went back here, I turned it, this. What is this called? Why is this hidden under here? And why is this so important?
So for me, again, being the amateur coming into this, this was life-changing. So this is the Batinov mask for focusing. And fundamentally what it allows you to do is point at a bright star, put it on, and it turns the light patterns into, you'll notice, can you hold that up to the camera again? There's 3 directions to the line. So you essentially end up with X's, 3 X's. And then you can simply gently adjust the focus knob to make sure they're all crossing in the center point. And something to do here is, once you've got an initial cut at it, if you back the gain down using some of the settings, you can get a little tighter lines on it. And it lets you focus in seconds. It's very, very easy. And I've typically found, unless there's a huge temperature change from night to night, it stays pretty much in focus. But being able to get that out there, again, simple tripod setup. It's got a nice bubble level on top of it. So checking that initially and adjusting the legs a little bit if you need to, just to make sure that it is level. That does make a difference for the enhanced vision. If it's not level, the tracking and other things can have a challenge. Next, it's just putting the scope on it. Now there's two screw knobs that are used to hold the scope on top. And it's really important to just make sure that they're all the way out and set it on so that it seats solidly all the way through. And then once it's there, you can just check that it's level, tighten it up, and you're done. So physically setting it up, it just takes minutes. And even if that's coming out of the backpack, which again, when I'm traveling, I'm popping it out, set the tripod up, set the scope up. And if I've got that sandbag with me, I'll just hang that from the legs. Okay. So physically very simple to set up there.
And Jan, there are a few tutorial videos that exist on using the Batinov mask. Is that right?
Yeah, we made one about how to use it. It's like a 6 or 7 minute long video, and we basically explain everything. You really have to use it. We recommend to use it at least at the beginning of every session. And sometimes you might have to use it during the session if the temperature changes during your observation. I mean, if you plan to stay a long time outside, you start your observation and you have so I'm always talking in Celsius degrees. Sorry, and if you start with 0 degrees, and then 2 hours later the temperature decreases, you might have to use it again, just to check if the focus is still all right. Just one or two things. So about the bubble level, Alex just told us about this one. It is quite important. You just said that you might have some issues with the tracking. You might have some issues with the go-to as well, if it's not perfectly leveled. the go-to may not find the object, or it may find it but not perfectly center it in the middle of the screen. So this is easy, guys, to check the bubble level. So just check it. It's like a 10 seconds thing to do. And one last thing about the two screws. So you just said that you have to unscrew, of course, to start by unscrewing the two screws to put the eVscope in the tripod. Then please make sure to fully tighten the screws, but not too much, because you could end up maybe, well, kind of I wouldn't say damaging the system, but just make sure this is perfectly well tight. That's it.
Just a nice hand tight is easy, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing.
Nice and easy.
And the temperature is a great example where I typically try to put the scope out and then give it a half hour to temperature normalize. And I've seen that have pretty good results of, I put it out, don't even power it on, let it normalize, and then I go through the focusing setup and that types of things after that.
Okay. And so one of the things that I thought was interesting was that, you know, there's a few different ways to get started where you've got some focusing. We use the Batinov mask. There's a focusing wheel down here. There's also collimation, which involves kind of adjusting the mirror. Do you do this before every observation? Should you do it before the first time you observe? What is the frequency at which you do these types of tweaks and adjustments, just so that people know if something's not going right, well, maybe it's one of those things.
And that's actually a good way to put it, is if something's not looking right, then that might be something worth trying. I was too anxious to see and actually start looking at the sky, so I did not collimate it when I first looked at it, because I could see stars in it, so something was working. If they started looking a little more egg shape or oblong or otherwise, then okay, that's a collimation problem. I did check it, and coming from the factory, essentially you blur the focus all the way out. And in doing so, there's a cross piece inside the scope. And if that looks like it's dead centered in the middle, it's collimated properly. Mine was perfectly collimated. I didn't have to do anything. So I didn't have to use the wrenches to adjust any of the screws for that. I know other folks who have. I've checked it once since then. I'm, again, traveling with it. I know it's bumping around a little bit as I do. I haven't had a challenge with it. If you're really a fanatic to make sure everything's pixel perfect, then maybe check it a little more often. But I don't know, Jan, are you finding other folks needing to do that more often?
Well, not really. I mean, unlike the Batinov mask, unlike the focus, the collimation doesn't depend on temperature. So basically, you shouldn't need to do the collimation more than like once a month. Maybe once every 2 or 3 months. I don't know. It all depends with the movement and the checking. Like, for instance, if you put your eVscope in the car and you had to drive like for, I don't know, like 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, and there were some shakes in the car, yeah, you may have to check the collimation. But if you just put your eVscope at your house, you don't particularly move it too much, well, you shouldn't have to do it. So you can still check it, because it's really easy to check. You just need to unfocus. You just need to turn the wheel, the focus wheel, at the far end, far left or on the right. Keep in mind that if you turn it counterclockwise, you can turn it at only 90 degrees. If you turn it clockwise, you will be able to turn it 270 degrees. Okay, that's not the same thing. And that's it. And you just need to show the cross to make the cross appear. And if the cross is perfectly aligned, that's it. And once again, we also have a tutorial video that explains everything about collimation.
Yeah. All right. So I definitely recommend that you guys check out that video. So let's assume that we have properly set up our tripod. Always double check the screws, be careful, make sure it's all set up. And then, of course, we've removed our cover, we've focused. There's this delightful eyepiece here, so don't forget to remove that. Now we're going to power on our eVscope. So I'm just going to press this button here, and I've noticed that there are a number of different lights. What should I be looking out for to know that I'm doing it right?
So I know I'm just looking for the solid red, which means that I'm actually connected to it. Jan, what are the magic cycles we have to actually know about?
Well, for now, you just need to wait for the LED to be red. That's it. And we chose red because that's like all the astronomers wants. We at the beginning we had green, and some guy said no, come on, green. No, you have to make the light red. So basically, yeah, it will be purple for like 5 seconds, and then it will become red. That's it. And yeah, as long as it's red, the eVscope is on. You can connect to it, and that's it.
So I'll show you quickly. This is what it looks like when you are not connected, and you're going to want to navigate to your Wi-Fi settings. So why don't I go ahead and do that for us here?
Hey.
Here we go. Hello, neighbor. And you're going to find your eVscope with your custom code here. And it's okay if it says that, right? No internet connection, because the eVscope is not meant to be the internet connection for your device.
Absolutely. Don't pay attention to this. Yeah.
And then look at that. This is pointing at my ceiling. So of course we don't get a gorgeous view, but Alex is momentarily going to take you through a few other items. So why don't we start here? Now let's assume that we've powered up and we're connected. And Alex, you mentioned that you had some cold weather tips for folks. So any special things that they should be doing, prior to that? You mentioned leaving it outside for about a half an hour, allow it to come to a temperature. Is that right?
That really was the key, was letting it get to the temperature, doing the focusing after that. As Jan said, if the temperature is dramatically shifting during the evening, coming to that, back to that as well. I do know a couple of folks in the online communities that have talked about putting some of the dew filters, or even in super cold weather, some things to keep things a little bit warmer. I haven't had any experience with that yet, so I'm not quite sure where that borderline is to start freaking out about it. Here outside of Chicago, things can get very cold. I think the coldest I've used it is about 10 degrees Fahrenheit. But that also is one of the things that I love about having it on the second floor balcony. There's a door 3 feet from that. I can have it on the balcony, and I'm sitting inside where it's warm, because I'm not looking to sit outside in the freezing cold weather for 3 hours.
Oh, I love it. So you mentioned once we've got it all set up, we're connected to the smartphone, and the app I know needs to be downloaded, of course. So if you haven't already done so, users, you can download that from the App Store, the Android store. And what do we do? We've connected to the app. What do we do next? I'm gonna show your screen, Alex, so that people can get a good sense.
So this is sitting in my house right now. The lens cap is on it. So we have clouds here tonight. So having checked, unfortunately, I couldn't do any live observing. Sorry for everyone on that. But this would be the point where, before we've done our focusing, it's pointed at the sky and we're going to see something. So no matter how out of focus we're still going to see it. So with that, the steps I would typically take is, so if it's standing perfectly vertical, the first thing I'll do is I'll bring it down to 60, 70 degrees. Just to start getting into a little bit more of the observing mode. At that point, shifting it to something where I can see a bright star in the sky. That's what I'm going to be using as my focusing with the mask. And then after that, hitting the button in the upper right there, and I'm not going to hit it so it doesn't start moving in the house here, but the one with the little cross on it, to essentially do an alignment and figure out where the heck it is, what's it pointing at. And to me, this is the #1 feature that I love about the scope, is that I don't have to align it pointed to a specific star. I don't have to do a 2, 3, 15 star alignment. I point it anywhere. If you hit that button, the scope figures out where the heck it is. That right there was the reason for me being able to use the scope. And that's how you're able to go from focusing in a minute or two, point it somewhere in the sky, it knows where it is, and then the next step is just being able to do a go-to. Now for the moving, we've got the joystick control down here on the bottom. You can either touch that yellow dot and drag it around. I'm personally not a huge fan of that, unless I'm moving a big distance. If I'm moving way down, I'll drag it down. But if I'm trying to move something around in the field of view, if you just tap on the arrows, it'll move about 1/8 of a field. So 8 or 9 taps will shift a star all the way across. So just tapping a couple of times really allows you to quickly navigate around, and it just feels a little more precise to me. So I very much like doing that. So with that, we're observing and we're looking at something, and we can now talk about going and selecting targets and finding things.
Jan, how bright does that star need to be if you are trying to locate an initial star to check that focus using the Bahtinov mask? Does it need to be the brightest star in the sky? How do you decide which star to choose from your menu?
Yeah. So for the eVscope to know where it is, you don't have to have some bright stars. I mean, as long as you can see stars, the eVscope can see it. So it should be able to know where it is. Then when it comes to the Bahtinov mask, you have to find some kind of a bright star. You can choose like I don't know, like Deneb from Cygnus or Vega maybe. But if it is too bright, sometimes the cross will be kind of hard to see. So it depends. I mean, it's kind of tricky to say, but the star needs to be bright, but not too bright. but don't worry about it.
And I'll have to disagree. I don't think we need a named star for it. And this might be just me being lazy sometimes. I point it anywhere in the sky, and within one field of view of the scope in some direction, there's something bright enough that it'll work.
Absolutely.
There's no such thing as a dark part of the
Bahtinov mask, but as long as you see stars, and if you want to activate the sky tracking, as long as you see stars, any stars, it should work.
Oh, and even for the focusing, I've had great success just pointing anywhere, not having to try to necessarily navigate, and just find something, and then adjusting the using the auto gain on the live view, so that filter panel there that works very well. But if I need to bump up the brightness a little bit, that still works well, even if something's a medium bright star. I've had good success with that.
Let's go, if you wouldn't mind, through the different menu elements of the app. So I'm just going to quickly pull up my phone, and you can see there's this main eVscope menu with the joystick. And as Alex mentioned, you can just do little taps, or you can actually drag it if you want to be moving a little bit further. There is the Explore menu. We have the Science menu, the Gallery, and it's just not showing some great stuff right now, and the User menu. So I want to start at the very beginning. Jan, could you talk to us a little bit about the different menus and what is the purpose of each of these kind of 5 tabs within the eVscope app?
Yep. The very first one, the eVscope tab, is basically where you will make your observations. You will see the sky, you will see objects, and this is where you will activate the enhanced vision with the big icon that looks like an eye and a star. So you can see either inside your eyepiece or on your screen, on smartphone screen, on iPad screen. And so you have everything here, and you also have an icon that allows you to edit some settings. So maybe we'll have time to talk about it. But this is where you see everything. This is where you make your observations. So the second one, Explore, where this is basically where you start, because before seeing anything, you have to choose an object. So this is really cool because it is you can see pretty much everything you have. I think we have more than between 5,000 and 6,000 objects right now. This is you have the recommended object. This is really cool because if you don't know what to look for, you can just have a look at what's recommended by Unistellar. The very first one will be the objects that are really close to where the eVscope is looking at right now on the list. And as you look for and you scroll on the right. Well, on the left, sorry, you will have other objects recommended by Unistellar, and they will be farthest and farthest from the. Sorry, I have a message on my computer. So yeah, the recommended objects are really cool, and then you can choose nebulae and galaxies and star clusters and stuff like that. This is really cool. If you select one, you have like a text and explanations about what you're gonna look like when you're gonna look at. So this is really cool. Don't hesitate to pick objects. Don't hesitate to choose objects and to just hit the go to button and just see what it looks like. That's really cool. And you can also learn in which constellation the object is located. That's a quite new feature. In the third tab, the science one, this is really nice. This is one of the main reason we created the eVscope as well. This is where you can participate to science and astronomical events like asteroid occultation. For now, we have this one, and we will very soon have other categories that's going to be available, like exoplanet detection and other stuff. So this is kind of something different than every other tabs. So we'll have a word on it about it. The fourth one, Alex will, I'm sure, show us a great images.
Yeah, I was wondering, Alex, could I have you pull up your incredible gallery, because it's going to be quite some time before mine is anywhere near as impressive as this.
So the only challenge in here is, so there's a lot in here. So there's a lot in here, and for me, I've found that then taking those out and then favoriting them just in the iPad photo album has helped considerably, just to be able to pull, because I'm capturing a ton when I'm doing it, and that has worked really well. So the example being, so this was actually my first light. So this was before collimating. This was before really knowing how to do a whole lot of focusing, looking through clouds. I've definitely seen other images since then, but I was hooked from day one being able to look at something like this. That was awesome. To being able to more recently actually take a collection of 4 different images, merge them together on the computer, process them a little bit, and get something more like that. And
really nice. So this is M42.
And it's very straightforward. And Jan, as you said, the navigation panel, I think for me the key example on the navigation is, again, not knowing necessarily what to look at, just being able to start, just type M. If you're not sure what to look at, just look at the Messier objects. And I, again, had never seen these really through a traditional telescope, because that's hard. Looking at some of the deep sky objects is just, it's not astrophotography, absolutely, but through the eye, it's a lot harder. So searching for this, and then I typically just, when I'm looking for something random to do, I'll look through the list and see, okay, what's in my field of view? So for example, right now, M5, I can see it's at minus 46 degrees altitude. So that's below the horizon. So I'll just search through and see what's up a little bit higher right now. That might be something visible. So M31 Andromeda, it's at 59 degrees. It's west-northwest. Off the back of my house, I can't look straight east below 30 degrees, but west-northwest I could. So that would give me a viable target. So it's just having a menu when you're not quite sure what to go look at. And again, I didn't know the constellations. I'm still learning all of that today. But being able to just browse, this gave me just a simple opportunity to just keep learning and see some pretty amazing stuff.
We could even talk about the little icon that you have on the top right, that will allow you to to add some kind of filters. If you are using your eVscope like from a balcony, for instance, you don't have like a perfect wide field of view. You can set up. Yeah, you can set up things. I will let you explain. And you can also check choose whether you are in the city, in the suburb, or in the countryside, and it won't display the same number of objects.
Absolutely. So I've been in, and again, where I am in the suburbs, it's still a Bortle 8, so it's very bright, but I can see most of the things in the suburb list at the top here. Switching to city will really filter it down to just the brightest. And then when I've had a chance to get out in the desert and the mountains, switching to countryside has worked great. And then all we're adjusting with the little Pac-Man here is really, again, just what should we filter in and out of the object list. So if I've got trees and I'm too close to the trees and I really can't see anything below 30-ish degrees, I can lift that up. If there's a building or trees or something blocking around me from a cardinal direction, I can, again, adjust that. And that's adjusting, taking the search part off, that's adjusting the recommendation list. And that, again, just makes it easy to find things. And that has been really helpful. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm an amateur coming into this, not really being excited about it, but not knowing anything. And being able to jump into any one of these and learn and actually understand, okay, what is this I'm looking at? Is this a galaxy? What does it mean? How is it formed? Where is it? This has been great background information. And another element for me from a navigation perspective, just understanding. So this is giving the right ascension and declination, essentially, where is it in the sky from my location? Where this got really interesting for me, though, was, so this is picking specific targets out of the library. The other thing that really impacted on me this year that I didn't really feel until this year was how dynamic the sky is, how much is changing. I have been just blown away at the number of comets and supernova and just other stellar events that have occurred in the last 18 months. And being able to hear about a comet and jump down to the bottom here and essentially enter the absolute coordinates for it and the scope to take me there. That was awesome. I had a chance to do some observing of the Atlas comet and some other types of things, actually, as part of one of the Unistellar efforts to try to prepare some deeper imaging. And that's exciting. So just knowing, if you know where something is, quickly type it in, you're there.
Be careful when you enter the coordinates, because we have some people sometimes who just make some mistakes. So just, be careful at what you write.
Yes, missing a digit would be a problem. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so just to recap, would you go back up to the sky window settings? So you're going to want to choose whether you're in the city, suburb, or countryside. And then the altitude is looking at your field of view around you. So think about that bottom axis as the ground, right? And the other one is kind of you standing. So you want to adjust that to your field of view. And then the azimuth, can we talk a little bit about that? So this relates to what's happening around you here. I see north, west, east, south. Where should I be looking? How do I know what I'm trying to crop out of my view?
So essentially, in this case, so for example, I am on a deck that faces west. So if I was trying to block the entire part of that sky, I would probably make it look a little more like this and say that, okay, that's my house blocking the sky. So any objects that fall in that direction, let's take them off the list because I'm not going to be able to get to them. And that, again, just filters and makes it a little easier.
Okay. So you want to go for the gold zone. That's the good zone.
And don't forget to check the visibility, because sometimes we have some emails from our users, and they say, "Come on, guys, I can't seem to find for instance, M42 or M13 in the list. I don't understand." Well, maybe it's because you checked with the city option, and if you activate the countryside option, then you will see it.
Okay, that's a great tip. So I have a question about the battery, because it's charged on right now, and I used it the first night and it worked for a while. How long will the battery last? How long should you initially charge it if you want to really maximize that first night of viewing?
Jan, what's the professional answer to that?
Yeah, right. Well, when you receive your eVscope, it should be charged at least half the battery should be charged. But okay, you can plug it. You can plug the charger, and you have to wait like 6 to 7 hours maximum to have it fully charged. Okay, when you plug your the charger, the LED will be blinking in blue from 6 times, meaning that it's not charging. It's not charged at all. To like a constant blue, meaning that it is fully charged. Okay, so it can take a while. Just wait for the LED to be to show like a constant blue. Just wait for the LED not to blink anymore. That's it. And then you should have 10 hours of battery life. Okay, so this is kind of cool. You have time to make your observations, and it will depend on the temperature. We've tested it with a temperature of minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit, okay, which equals to minus 20 degrees Celsius, and the battery life will decrease, obviously, but you should be able to use it for at least 5 to 6 hours, maximum. But if you have like a regular temperature, you should already have your 10, maybe 11 hours if you like. Depends how you use your eVscope. If it moves a lot, but it's between let's say 10 hours.
And you're a serious user if you're using it for 10 hours straight. That's
yeah, all right, you are.
and I'm typically 2-3 hours, maybe 4 on the longest, and again it works great for that. I just charge it every night after I put it in, bring it inside, and I can't say that I've had any battery issues ever. Now that said, I am planning some longer excursions out into, again, desert and mountains once travel's a little more accessible, and just having external USB compatible batteries. It's just a USB-C plug on the scope, so having external power sources, I fully expect that we can do some more interesting things for a longer period of time. Pretty straightforward.
And pro tip, you can actually plug in and charge your smartphone from the eVscope, correct? I believe there is a little port down here. So if you want to keep your smartphone charged, worry about your device, that is an option.
Now, since we are talking charging, the other thing we should probably touch on quickly, just because I know we had a report on one of the Facebook groups of a user that had a little bit of a challenge, is, so for example, my scope right now is plugged in, which is one of the reasons I don't want to move it a whole lot. There's an option right here in the middle of the page to limit the motion when it's plugged in. If you have it plugged in, again, if you're trying to do a long duration viewing, that to me is because you've got a cable down to a battery that's hanging right below it. If you're running over to a wall plug and it's moving around, you don't want that cord getting yanked out or causing some kind of damage to the scope. So if you're going to use it while plugged in, definitely turn this on. I would just recommend don't use it while plugged in unless you've got a real serious reason to do that.
Absolutely.
I wonder, could you share, I've heard some tips to avoid running into your eVscope, knocking it over, tripping on it. I mean, these are things that just seem sad or tragic or silly, but they happen, and it could be maybe not you, but somebody who's with you observing. So what advice do you have to avoid people either dropping their scope, tripping on their scope, or having someone else run into the scope in a dark environment?
So for the stationary scope, and I think this goes really for all scopes, but I think given the eVscope and the likelihood that there's more people around it, hanging that red flashlight underneath it, having a little red light just pointed down at the ground or leaving something on the ground, that's worked wonders, just to make it really simple so that even as you're walking around, that you don't accidentally bump the leg in the middle of a longer enhanced vision. That kind of thing helps a lot. So having some visibility, again, if you're really going to geek out, having the red headlight yourself is helpful, just to keep hands free for it. And again, I've got a little basket that I have hanging between the legs, and that's where I set the iPad or the iPhone when I'm attaching those to the scope as well. So they're there. I don't want somebody bumping into that and the iPad falling. So yeah, having just a little visibility there is important. When carrying it, I will admit I do carry it occasionally with the scope attached to the tripod, and I make real sure that I'm supporting both of them equally so that it doesn't break apart. Just holding the tripod and not touching the scope, that would be dangerous. So just realizing that these are two things that attach together, normally trying to transport them separately when possible.
Okay. So you mentioned vision. I realize that we haven't talked about that yet. And Jan, I wonder, could you explain to us what is enhanced vision? Because we've talked about locating an object, going to the object, but the magic really happens when you turn that enhanced vision on. What's happening there and why is it important? Any tips for making the most of the enhanced vision?
Yeah, of course. This is the main feature of the eVscope. It has been designed to show you what can be seen by pretty much any eye or anything. So what enhanced vision does is that it accumulates light from very distant objects, very faint objects. So when you're in live view, you won't see much. You'll see only like very, very faint objects. But as soon as you activate the enhanced vision and you wait, and that's the nice thing. That's the really cool thing about the eVscope. You just have to wait like few seconds, like less than a minute. Like even we're talking about 8 to 12, 20 seconds, and you'll see stuff. You'll see nebulae, you'll see galaxies, and you'll see colors. Is really nice. So yeah, it accumulates light, and it will do what we call stacking. So it means that it will save images, and it will put an images on top of the other. So it will add some more light, some contrast, some details. And the more you wait, the longer you wait, the better quality you'll have. Okay, but you shouldn't have to wait too long. I mean, you don't have to wait more than 2 to 3 to 5 minutes to have the really great images. You can wait way longer than that. There's some people who like to wait. I don't know, Alex, what you like to do, but you can go until like, I don't know, an hour if you want, but you don't necessarily need to do that for each and every observation. Basically,
I totally agree. My longest exposure was about 2 hours, and I typically target between 6 and 10 minutes. I think that's plenty. And within 2 minutes, you're seeing some pretty amazing things. That's what I love about it. And really, by that 10-minute mark, you have to invest so much more time to just get a little bit more. Again, my goal is to be able to get out there, set up in 5 minutes, and I've looked at 15 to 20 things in an hour. That's the power of the scope. That's what I love about it. Just the variety and the excitement, seeing all of these different things. And if there's something really interesting, sure, I can stay with it and watch that a little bit more. But just the ability to have that variety and not be stuck on 1 or 2 things for a night.
Yeah, and be aware that the more you wait, the longer you wait, I don't know how to say that in English, but you'll have to wait more and more to get the image to have a better quality. I mean,
exactly. It takes exponentially more time to get that next level of quality. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So
and these were just two examples of. These were just 2 examples of the enhanced vision in action. And you can see it pulling out a little bit more detail, but it was great from the get-go.
So I wonder.
One last thing, just 10 seconds. One last thing about the planets and moon. That's the only objects for which you shouldn't use the enhanced vision because the enhanced vision will accumulate the light. But if you're looking at very bright objects, activate the enhanced vision will only make it worse, basically. So for moon and
won't work at all. Yes.
Yeah, it won't work at all. So for moon and planets, you just have to use the live view. And I would go further. You have to use the live view, and you have to lower what you're showing right now. You have to lower the gain and the exposure time to get great images and to get details.
Absolutely. And that gain going very, very low, the exposure time typically to maybe a millisecond, looking at Saturn or Jupiter. So this is the kind of shot for the eVscope. And to me, this is actually a great guide to the sky. If you look at this, essentially the field of view of the eVscope is the size of the moon. So if you're not looking at the scope and you're looking at the sky, and especially with the conjunction we've got coming up with Saturn and Jupiter being close to each other, as soon as they're about the distance of the width of the moon apart, we're going to get them in the same frame. And that just gives us a great way to eyeball it. And I had never really thought about that with other scopes before. So just knowing that the eVscope equals about one moon width was perfect. But yeah, being able to have the other planets, and I don't think I have one here, but hitting the planets in live view, absolutely. And being able to just, again, dial the gain and exposure way down, and we can start seeing some detail. And pinch and zoom in on the image.
Yeah. We know planets are, we know users.
And it's a great question in regards to, is the color the result of image stacking, or is it an artificial enhancement? Can you speak to what is going on there?
Well, it is a result of stacking, of course, and there's a little of treatments, but not that much. I would have to admit I'm not a specialist in that part of the how the eVscope work, but what I can say is that we don't how can I say that? We don't cheat on anything. Of course, this is the real, like the real color, and stacking some images will make it even better. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that, and this is a great example where this was great. I then was taking the same image, and again, one of the things I like is that the ring with the information, I'm always capturing a version with that, so I know what was I shooting and what date was it and where was I and for how long was the exposure. But then also being able to capture the entire rectangle. And then this was just a quick touch up in Lightroom on my iPad, and being able to pull all of this extra data and just detail out of the sky that, again, from the initial image, okay, didn't really know it was there, but there's a lot there. So the images straight out of the scope are great, and then just a quick touch in your favorite photo software to bump up a few things, just really starts to show just some awesome structure and formation of what's going on up there, what you've got in the nebula, what's happening to those galaxies. And that to me is part of the excitement, is that even that first blush of looking at something, what's hiding in that detail. And this is personally one of my favorites, is just being able to get in and again see some of those things that, yes, we've seen them from some of the really famous telescopes, but to see it live, whether it's in the eyepiece, or I personally really like looking on the iPad just because it makes the images a little easier for me to see. It's the excitement of it's there, it's real, and you're discovering it yourself as you go through, even though you've got that catalog. It's a great feeling.
And what's great is you can share it very easy on your socials, right? To impress your friends. Like with two clicks, you can share it on like Twitter or Facebook, and this is cool.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's sharing the images themselves, or I'll sometimes capture on the iPad even just screen recordings of the video. That was how I did those time-lapse video. But the same thing on a mobile device, being able to run something like a Zoom or a web conferencing software, just sharing what you have on that device. This was a great example. I was actually, so this picture was taken on an iPhone, so it was actually dark, but the iPhone did a great job of bringing it up. But I was actually on a web conference with my dad. I was out in New Mexico. He was in Florida. I was sharing what I was looking at from the eVscope out in the desert. And all that you need for that is that, yes, you're connecting to the eVscope's Wi-Fi, as long as you had a cellular signal. And we tried really hard to find someplace where we had 2 bars, so I had enough of a cellular signal to work. We were talking. So we were doing joint observing across the country. That's something else that I really think the eVscope is going to allow, connecting people in a way that we haven't been able to do before. It's awesome seeing people come together in viewing parties and physically look through scopes. But especially in these days where we can't do that, it's just very, very possible to be in a much more interesting environment and share with people. So I think we're going to see a lot more ability to stream objects and collaborate and just experience this together. I know I've done this kind of thing, just sharing the iPad screen with folks at my company. and having a dozen families come together and being able to talk about objects and just point around the sky. And it's just a great time to bring people together.
And pro tip, Zoom is super user-friendly if you want to do a screen share of the Unistellar app. So you could set up a Zoom private or, something with your family. You can stream it out, and it's very, very simple to broadcast the app through Zoom or even other tools as well. I have a few questions that I want to make sure that we get to before our time is up. And one that has come up frequently and is actually on our list of things that we want to be sure to talk about is the importance of a dark frame. And how do you capture a dark frame, and why is that step important?
So being the non-expert, I can share my experiences with that. So the dark frame is really about, so any digital camera, they're essentially, it's pulling in pixels. And as a part of that, especially as the temperatures change, the pixels are measuring light at different levels. And the way the stacking needs to work, it really needs to know exactly, hey, what's really coming in. So the ability to get to wherever it is that you're going to go, temperature normalized, put the cap on, and then essentially capture this and tell the scope this should be black, and being able to do that off of essentially just the My eVscope page here, and having the button for taking a dark frame and tapping that, and it takes 15-20 seconds. It's sampling it and storing it. So my summary of that is it stores where the noise is in the camera, so it can extract that noise from the picture. And it gives you much better results. If you ever have an image where you see blue or red dots to it, that's some of that noise. So the dark frame is really critical for taking that out. Jan, I'm assuming that's something, I know I do that every time after right before I focus, I'm taking the dark frame. Is that normal practice for folks, is do it every time?
Yeah. The dark frame, you need to take a dark frame like quite often, and keep in mind that it will get rid of the hot pixels like blue, red, and sometimes green pixels as well. Will get rid of it only with the enhanced vision. When the enhanced vision is active, you may see some hot pixels when you're in live view. That's part of all the eVscope or all the digital camera. They show this kind of hot pixels sometimes, and that's the dark frame right now won't get rid of it, but only in enhanced vision. And this is really important. This is really important for the eVscope to see to be like pitch black. And we have some emails from users who say, okay, doesn't work for me. I don't know why. The sky is perfectly dark. No full moon, no light, no city light, no anything, and it's still not working. Why? So it can happen from time to time. We worked on it very much, and basically what you have to do is to make sure that this is perfectly dark, and you just need to try again. It will work at some point. And I want to reassure people with our new version that will be available very soon in the coming days, coming weeks. The dark frame process should be way better. I mean, right now the eVscope takes 5 frames, and it will soon takes like 20 frames. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you that. Keep that for you. But this is one of the thing that we've worked on. So the dark frame will now it should work, and it will work even better with the next version.
And Jan, I think you just hit on something to me really important there, which is that Unistellar keeps enhancing things. And that's something that having reached out to the team, having had conversations, seeing the community connection and the interest in thoughts about the next version, the ability to provide feedback and ideas and see those actually come to life in the app and in the Scope software. That's been awesome. This isn't something where it's standing still. It's going to continue to do new things. And again, I think that's another great reason why folks definitely get into these Facebook communities, share your thoughts, interact with folks, because that's going to help improve everything.
Mm-hmm. That's a great tip, Alex. How do people find the Facebook communities that exist? Where do they go? What do they search for?
So in Facebook, if you search for eVscope, you should see a couple of different communities there, or eVscope Los Angeles, eVscope Global. There's also an eVscope Europe if you happen to be over in Europe. And you can request to join any of those groups. And that's something that a couple of us that help run those groups try to get folks into those very quickly. And it's and again, there's hundreds of folks in each of those, sharing images, sharing tips, in some cases sharing stories of challenges of a scope that fell over and thankfully survived and it was still working. But whatever those stories are, but it's building a community. So finding those kind of things, I'll actually throw a link if I can into the YouTube comments as well to try to make that easy for folks. But highly recommend that. That's a great source for information, and to find other folks who are as passionate as some of us are that want to do more together.
I noticed a great tip from one of our users, and so I'll pop that up. Get a magnetic USB cable for charging while using the scope. So that way, if the cord wraps, it won't break the cord. Great tip. Thank you very much.
Right.
There's another great tip from Bing talking about during these socially distant times, he's connected an iPad to the eVscope and then mounted it on a tripod so that people can look at the iPad now on a tripod without needing to use the eyepiece. So that,
and I think that's a great example where I know, for example, when Unistellar's been doing some driving around, and I know I've done this as well. Taking the iPad or the iPhone, connecting it via cable to a Mac, for example, you can bring that image onto a computer and then put it on a really big screen. So that's achievable too. Not necessarily out in the middle of nowhere, but it's something where we can, again, share bigger views.
So I know we're just a few minutes over, but I would love to get through a few last questions. So great question here. Can you guys talk about screen grabbing images versus gallery saving images? I think we've all felt the urge to just go ahead and screen grab. What's the difference? And then if you could also tell us about how some of your images have the round crop, some of them are that full frame. So could you talk about that as well?
Definitely. So I'll start with the round versus the rectangular. So in general, the image data it's the rectangular. The round side of things, again, it does a great job of attaching some of the data to it, but you're missing some of the other elements around it. So I typically actually, for anything I'm trying to capture, and you can see this was one of the 2-hour shots that I was doing. I'm going to capture it both ways. So I'm going to put the circle on it and going the other way. For enhanced view, I'm always going to be using the download the image. I found those to be much better than anything that I'm pulling out of the other elements. So that would be when looking at the live view. Here we go. So that's in the upper right. That's the arrow pointing down. That's the download button. So that works in both live view and enhanced mode. In enhanced mode, use that all time. I will capture screen captures in particular because what I'll do is I will actually open this panel because I'm not always running on automatic. So if I'm setting manual settings, I'll do a screen capture so I can remember what gain and exposure time I'm using with a particular image, and that'll help me for the next time. Same thing for the enhanced vision sometimes is grabbing a screenshot with those settings just to help me document it. And then it just puts it all in the photo roll and I don't have to think about it. I don't have to have a logbook with me. That's worked really well. If I'm looking at the moon, I'm still torn as far as the live view download versus live view screenshot. The downloaded pictures are technically a lower resolution than the on-screen picture of an iPad because the iPad has a higher resolution on the screen, meaning the iPad itself is doing a little bit of smoothing in the pixels. I personally like those results a little bit better. And what I'll do, and this is something I didn't know for the longest time, if you're live viewing and you just tap once on the screen, all the controls hide. That's when I take the screenshot. So having the live view up, tap once, that works. So I'll do it both ways, but I'll typically screenshot live view, download enhanced view. That's that's been my experience.
What about you, Jan? What is your preference?
I like to use the app, so I like to use the icons. I like to use the save button. No, I just want to say that we had lots of users who asked us, would it be possible to have access to uncompressed image and raw images? So right now, I'm afraid to say that this is not a feature that's available, but I do want to point out that we hear you, we hear you, and we'll probably work on
change
something.
Everything. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we know that. Really, yeah. So right now, of course, the images are kind of compressed, of course. So yeah, we have lots of people who ask, okay, if I had the chance to get access to the uncompressed images and then edit them myself with other software. So right now we don't have this kind of a feature, but yeah, I guess we'll work on something later on. Okay, in the near future we'll work on something. I cannot promise you anything. I cannot give you any dates, but I can say that we know that this is an important topic. So I believe we'll work on something.
All right. So last question, Alex. What about parking and storage? Any tips for where you typically store your eVscope to make sure that it stays protected?
So I guess first from a parking perspective, so there is the automated parking feature. So that's off of the rightmost tab. Tapping that to park it, auto shuts off. I typically do that just to make sure it's going through the shutdown that it would need to. And again, just a button in the middle of the screen there. In my case, if it's at home, I've got the deck outside. I'll bring it inside. I typically actually leave it on the tripod just inside those doors because I've got an area I can set that to. I've got the charger set up there and I can go ahead and plug it and charge it in there. If I'm traveling with it or I'm somewhere that's not at home, I'm typically breaking everything down and actually putting it right back into the backpack and keeping it actually all padded. If it's an environment where I'm not quite sure the traffic of who's going to walk through, that same thing of people tripping on it in the dark, I don't want people tripping on it in the light just because there's this, it's in the way of an area where they're not used to walking through. So I like to pack it away in that way if I'm traveling or just coming back from travel.
Well, thank you, everybody. We did get to some basics today, but we didn't get to everything. There are some tips, some troubleshooting. There are many advanced features. So if we didn't get to it today, just know there are resources for you that exist online. Check out the eVscope website, the product section, reach out for help, and use those user groups. Those Facebook groups are amazing. It's really a beautiful thing. Thank you, Alex, for being one of the champions and one of the administrators for those groups. So thank you for everybody who joined us today, and clear skies, wide eyes to everybody. Thank you, Jan, for waking up so early all the way across the world to join Alex and I.
It's a pleasure. And don't forget to contact us. I mean, we saw a lot of questions in the comments that we couldn't answer about for instance, the upload data, which is a very important thing. We didn't get the chance to talk about it, but we'll do that in other lives. But just feel free to contact us if you have any questions. You can go log on to our website, unistellar.com, unistellaroptics.com. And in the support tab, you can contact us, ask us all the questions you have, and I personally will have to will answer you with other colleagues. But feel free to do it.
So we didn't get to it today. Just know that there is still tomorrow. And so thank you so much, Jan. Thank you for all the colleagues at Unistellar for being such great supporters to our community. Thank you again to Alex. I hope you guys had a great time with us and that you'll join us on Monday for our Winter Solstice Virtual Star Party. It's going to be another fun event. With that, I bid you all goodbye. So long.
Goodbye. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Thanks, Alex.